2 pizzas are probably worth 25 to 30 because there's a whole email thread. He kept saying, why won't anybody give me my pizzas? You can make money on this. Today, or earlier, last night, $66 million. Yeah, so it's a kind of cute story. May 22nd every year is called Pizza Day or Bitcoin Pizza Day or something. So what is blockchain technology? These are my words, but they're sort of picked from the literature and so forth. It verifiably moves data on a decentralized network. And the economics of blockchain technology are really around that. Verification and the economics of verification and the economics of networking. And in many ways, blockchain adds certain costs to the verification through this consensus protocol that we'll be studying. But it lowers some other costs of verification because you're not relying on a centralized authority. So it's really a trade-off of cost of verification. I don't think I'm not a purist that says it's better or worse, but it's a trade-off of cost of verification through decentralized networks. The data can be valued, like Bitcoin was a money system, or the data can be actually computer code. And we'll learn a lot about smart contracts. And you could have the data being verified computer code and algorithms. My world, finance, this directly goes to the plumbing of finance because finance is fundamentally about moving money and risk through a network. And that network is the 7 billion people that live on this world. It's moving money and risk. And you've all taken finance courses, or many of you have, and it's the intermediation of money and risk throughout our economy. But there's a whole host of challenges. And over the course of this semester, we'll talk about those challenges, technical, commercial, and public policy hurdles. Will they be solved? Will they not be solved? But it could be a catalyst, but we're not sure yet, for change in the world of money and finance. So does anybody want to tell me the role of money in society? And tell me your first name.
Tomas.
Tomas.
Basically, it's a way to exchange things and services between people.
All right. Medium of exchange. Got that one.
Without going to factory and exchange them.
It's a medium of exchange. Somebody give me a second yellow shirt.
Medium of saving.
Savings. All right. So that would be a store of value.
Yeah.
Third, I'm sorry, the gentleman here.
Unit of account.
Unit of account. Wow. All right. There we go. There we go. So we're going to spend some time next Tuesday talking more about money and the role of money and the history of money, which I think is sort of lays a foundational piece of this. What about the role of finance? I've already sort of said a few things about that, but and I'm sorry I don't know your name, but I'm pretty good at one. Yeah, role of finance. Sorry, I'm not going to tell any finance professor what your answer is.
To raise money.
To raise money. So keep going. Anybody else want
to connect savers and borrowers?
Connect savers and borrowers. So connecting is sort of moving money, moving valuations. So that's the pieces of it. It's sort of moving, making valuations. I use the words moving, allocating, and pricing. Pricing is the valuations of money. But let's not forget it's also about risk. When you buy insurance, that's a transference of risk. When you buy an equity stock, that's a transference of risk. If you enter into a complex credit default swap, that's a transference of risk. So finance is not just the movement of money, it's the movement of risk as well. Throughout the economy, and I always think finance, I've thought this when I was at Goldman Sachs for 18 years, that finance sits at the neck of an hourglass. And it's why back so much. Anxiety is when you sit at the neck of an hourglass and some of those grains of sand, you get uber wealth. And those are for other classes, but finance can collect a lot of economic rents. The financial sector, though, has a bunch of challenges. We'll have one lecture later in the semester about some of those challenges. We have a reading. I think Sheila Baer wrote something recently that I asked you all to read later in the semester, but we'll talk about the financial crisis and some of the problems. But it's had a lot of crises. Fiat currencies have a lot of instabilities, of course. We have centralized intermediaries, as I laid out, and we'll talk about, collect a lot of economic rents. So there's opportunity. Blockchain has real opportunity to kind of come under this world of finance and maybe do some things better. Central banking also have a bunch of legacy payment systems. And those legacy payment systems are slowly adapting, but it's slow. And why did Alipay do so well in China is part of the story, because there were so many unbanked, just like M-Pesa in Kenya. But here in the US, we still pay 2.5% to 3% for our interchange charges for Visa, MasterCard, and the like. And a lot of clearing and settlement still has a lot of counterparty risk. And one that I care deeply about, financial inclusion. There's still 1.7 billion people in this world who are unbanked. And so we don't think of it as much in the developed countries, but it's certainly true in many products, even here in the US. And these are, to me, the opportunities. Finance is 7.5% of the US economy. That's $1.5 trillion of revenues. So any of you that are thinking about entrepreneurial opportunities, the payment system just here in the US is 0.5% to 1% of our economy. That's $100 to $200 billion of revenues. I think Visa is about 18 billion. But when you add up the whole payment system, that's $100 to $200 billion in revenues. So that's kind of the opportunity. Can blockchain technology come in? It's got problems, it's slow, it's performance issues still, but can it compete with that? Here are some of the problems the financial sector would say with blockchain. These are real live things that we're going to study later in the semester. They say it doesn't have the performance, scalability. A modern payment system, you need to be able to move about 100,000 payments a second. A modern securities clearing, the Depository Trust Corporation, the Securities and Exchange Commission says, you do about 30,000 transactions a second, but we need you to scale, and your computers and everything have to be resilient to 100,000 transactions a second. Bitcoin, you can do about 7 transactions a second. Visa currently, depends on the second, does anywhere from 20 to 70,000 a second. So it's just a sense of scalability and performance. We might get there, it might be 3 to 7 years away. I'm optimistic, but there's still a bunch of performance and scalability issues. Privacy and security. Blockchains by their nature are public. So they're not fully censorship resistant, but there's a lot of innovation about making them more private. But then that makes the public sector a little nervous. Interoperability, they don't necessarily work yet with other legacy systems or with each other. The internet, one of the great innovations of the internet, it became interoperable, that all of these different websites could kind of speak with each other. Governance is a very big issue we'll talk about. And one of the things about governance is it's hard to update the software of a blockchain. Because if you create a decentralized where no one's in control, no one can collect economic rents, you also don't have sort of somebody with the ability to necessarily update the software. And we'll talk later about how Bitcoin updates its software and what Bitcoin core developers are and so forth. But Facebook, you do know one thing, though they're a company that collects a lot of, they know how to update their software. It's a governance issue that's a real life challenge. And that's why the financial sector says, I'm not sure this works, this is ready yet for me. And then thus, what are the commercial use cases and what are the public policy issues? So right now, the financial sector favors permission blockchains versus permissionless. This is going to be about 4 weeks from now. We'll kind of go through these two differences, but I want to just frame this briefly. Permission blockchains have a known group of people who actually participate. The half of you that said you've owned Bitcoin, you know it to be something where anybody can update the ledger. Permission blockchains, you can't do that. In essence, you pick the 3 or 20. The Australian Stock Exchange is updating their clearing and settling. They announced they're doing a blockchain project. They're doing it with digital assets, and they're using the Hyperledger blockchain, which is an IBM software, open source software. But the Australian Stock Exchange is going to put it on 3 computers, which is called 3 nodes, that they control all 3 of them. The Depository Trust Corporation is looking at blockchain-inspired solutions for some of their data warehouses, but they too are going to control the nodes. I'm just giving you, that's permission blockchains. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just how they're looking at this. Permissionless blockchains are like Bitcoin. Unknown participants, securities based on incentives, a cryptocurrency, and crypto economics. Crypto finance is about 200 billion, but you have to update these slides daily. 2 days ago, it was 230 billion. And this little pie chart is a little over half is Bitcoin. The next slice is something called Ethereum, and then Ripple and down the line. We're not going to spend a lot of time in this semester. If your goal is to how can you profit and day trade Bitcoin and day trade Ether, God bless, go prosper. You can stay in the class. I just won't give you much advice on it. This is not a crypto investing centered class. But I'm okay if that's what you're doing. Does anybody know what the worldwide capital market size is?
15 trillion.
Anybody want to guess? This is 200 billion. What's it look like? I've already said it's modest.
Hundreds of trillions.
Hundreds of trillions. Global equity, about 80 trillion. Global bond and debt markets, 250 trillion. So it's still quite modest compared to that broad breadth of capital formation. And gold, if Bitcoin's digital gold, what's the value of gold? All the gold that's ever been, Tom?
6 or 7 trillion.
7 trillion. Or just give you a sense of scale. So there's also something that's interesting about this space is that it's outsized public attention, even as evidenced by the 100 of you in this room, versus the size it is relative to the capital markets today. There's a bunch of public policy issues. We'll have a lecture. I'm a former regulator. I ran the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. But this course is not about regulation. No, we have to always come back to regulation. We always have to infuse what we're doing with the regulation. But let me just give you a little framework, and then you'll have to be bored in a handful of weeks and read. I gave some congressional testimony on it. Yes, it will be required reading. Sorry. But it's guarding against illicit activity. A lot of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies started out in the cyber punk sort of movement and libertarian movement, so forth. And it is true, you can use this for illicit activity, absolutely. But I would say crime is not new, just the mechanisms and means are new. And so the criminals, yes, will use this and have used it for illicit activity. Financial stability, central bankers around the globe sort of, will this shape finance? Well, it's only 200 billion. The financial markets are 300 trillion plus, not yet is generally what they're saying. But for some countries, it's a way to get around capital controls. And so for those countries worried about capital controls, it's a very real and live set of issues. And then protecting the investing public. And when we do this in a few weeks, I'll go through each of these, the investor protection issues, and yes, the SEC, how we test, and the like. For those who wish to do their own initial coin offering, I'll give some, broad sense of what the SEC is trying to accomplish. But it's a moving target. So this is a very interesting thing. As opposed to many of your Sloan classes or your CCEL classes or Media Lab classes, this is a very unsettled area of public policy. So it makes it interesting. And if you all go off and form companies, you'll actually be helping sort of set the edge of that public policy debate. I'd always say, just remember Poet Riley, the duck test. This is a poet, Indiana poet, so those that aren't from the US might not know the duck test. But basically, if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's a duck. So whenever you're thinking about public policy, folks like myself, who once was a regulator, we think in the duck test. And then we secondarily think about the actual words in the congressional act. Where's the common sense? And if it quacks and walks like a duck, it's probably a security, or it's probably this or that. The incumbents, like this Linus in the corner, are eyeing this space because there's a lot of volatility, and Wall Street makes money on volatility. Volatility is the friend of Wall Street. It might not be the friend of investors, but it's a friend of Wall Street. They also like the trading volumes and the spreads. Coinbase, the largest crypto exchange here in the US, has 20 million accounts. They might not all be active, but that's the size of Fidelity's membership account list, and twice D.E. Shaw. And Robinhood, how many of you have ever used Robinhood as a trading app? Wow, half of you. So free trading, right? 5 million members. For those who don't know, you can download Robinhood and you can trade stocks for free. No commission. And if anybody's interested, show up and I'll do office hours on how Robinhood commercializes. They commercialize your order flow, and they make money without charging you commissions. But it's a sort of wonderful app. Millennials love it. 5 million members already. So you better believe D.E. Shaw and the incumbents are worried about things like that. The startups are also more willing to beg for forgiveness from regulators. They're willing to sort of take risks and beg for forgiveness, whereas incumbents tend to have to ask for permission. So there's an unlevel field that it's an asymmetric business set of risk about regulatory risk. Not always. I'm not like crying for JP Morgan. The big incumbents have their advantages. And Coinbase is becoming an incumbent rather than just a startup in a sense. And we'll talk during the semester about some of the incumbents. We're probably going to get Jeff Spreckers here in mid-November. He's going to talk to you about what Intercontinental Exchange and the New York Stock Exchange is doing with Starbucks and Microsoft and the like. The financial sector use cases, I'm not going to go through these, but this is the second half of the course is going to go through each of these, and we'll do 1 to 2 sessions on each. Payment systems, central bank digital currency, secondary market trading, venture capital and initial coin offering space. We'll do a course on that and move through. So what are we going to do in this whole course? Basically, our goal is to learn the fundamentals. That's about roughly the first half of the course. Pivot to 2 sessions on the economics. We're going to be talking about the economics throughout the whole course, but I want to really just drill down on the economics on 2 of the discussions. And then riff through the financial space for the second half. That's our journey together. To me, it's for anybody who wants to gain critical reasoning skills. This is not just kind of a, hey, this is going to change the world and revolutionize everything class. And so I basically think of an old Defense Department term called ground truths. It's when the general doesn't really know what's going on, but needs to figure it out and needs to talk to that corporal on the ground who's got dirt all over him and has been shot up and says, here's the real ground truth. We're going to try to talk about ground truths in this class and separate the mere assertion from the hype. And some of your readings will be some real Bitcoin and blockchain minimalists, from Nouriel Roubini that uses words I'm not supposed to repeat on a recording about this stuff, to Paul Krugman, and Joe Stiglitz and other Nobel laureates who say, no, it's not going to work, or Warren Buffett, to maximalists. We're going to try to cover both sides. Larry Lessig is honoring me because he's in the back of the class, who's an enormously esteemed professor from Harvard. I didn't know Larry was going to be here, and I did the slide before, but in 1999, I think you wrote this book, Larry. Is that right? Code and Other Laws of Cyberspace. I put you on the, but I think it's worthwhile to think about Larry's 4 bits here. And I don't know, Larry, if you want to say anything, but I'm going to try to infuse this course in just how you think about this. The tech, we're at MIT, the technology, and we're going to get you a lot of technology. If you want more than I can give you is a former finance sort of type my whole life. There's going to be a bunch of computer science people in the class. We're going to hook you up together with the folks from the Media Lab and CSAL and try to connect you to the technology side if you want to swim deeper in that pond. But the technology really, really matters. And that's why we are going to go through hash functions and go through asymmetric cryptography and so forth from a business perspective. Markets matter. Why is it that incumbents or startups are or are not doing this and that? Why is it 10 years in and nobody's got an enterprise-wide solution yet to payments that use blockchain? The law matters. The public policy side matters. And the fourth of Larry's layout, social norms. That's a little harder for me to teach. That's not what this class is about, but it is also affects all this. It's not just the technology, the markets, and the law. So it's not just a 3-legged stool, it's kind of a 4-legged stool. How'd I do, Larry?
Excellent.
I really didn't know Larry was going to be here. So, but I wanted to give you a framework for how your faculty member thinks, and we'll be on this journey together. Range of perspectives. We're not going to be Bitcoin minimalist or maximalist. I'm probably, to be self-disclosed here, a little bit center minimalist on Bitcoin. Smart contract, minimalist, maximalist, I'm probably pretty center. Larry's probably a little bit center maximalist, I'm guessing.
I'm hoping I can be, but you're going to teach me whether I can.
So you're still center or center minimalist? What, smart contracts? And then blockchain maximalist or minimalist. I'd say a few weeks ago I was kind of center maximalist, and I'm sort of skidding back to the middle. Permission blockchain, I'm a little bit more, and there's some in here. Alon is one of your Sloan cohort that you might know. 6 months ago when we met was working on a permissionless system, and now you're working on a permission system. You have a startup.
That's correct.
Yeah, because like you bounce up into the market realities, and we're going to talk a lot in this course about critical thinking about when do you really need the advantage of a decentralized peer-to-peer system where the costs of trust are such that that's the right way to go. But I am one who thinks that there's also so much economic rents in the financial system that $1.5 trillion of revenues, or 7.5% of our economy, or just 200 billion in payment systems, for instance, that there may be times that you don't really need a decentralized system, but it just might be your opportunity to tuck in underneath all of those economic rents and all those revenues. Now, incumbents will react. You poke an incumbent, commercially poke them, and they're going to react. And that's why I think blockchain may well be a catalyst for change, even if incumbents then adopt a lot of that inside. The requirements of the course. Class participation is a hard thing to judge as a faculty member when I have this many people. So, but I always think class participation.
Okay, well, I think we'll get going here. We got a few people that have shown up for the live stream. Welcome back, everybody, for the afternoon session. We were just listening briefly to a MIT opening course on introduction of blockchain and money. And so as fall of 2018, what we'll do is we'll get started. Where we were at before, going through territorialism. Looks like we have some better signal now. Hopefully it continues. I would highly recommend people educate themselves about blockchain. Either you're going to have to educate yourself now or you're going to be forced to learn about it later, I think. I think that it's major opportunity for those who are the early adopters. Cliff High talks about that. And so if you get in now while it's still low, the nice thing about blockchain is that it cannot be copied, I shouldn't say copied. Cryptocurrencies cannot be, they can't do what they do with the fiat currencies. They can't just start printing them like mad. The only cryptocurrencies are mined. And now there are cryptocurrencies that are bankster ones. And so that's another reason to educate yourself about them. The bankster ones are ones that the banksters can sit there and just print them like mad or digitize them like mad. And so that's why I like Bitcoin, because there's a maximum of 21 million that will ever be mined. Litecoin is also good, a maximum of 84 million that will ever be mined. And that's all that'll ever be mined. And so what happens is now some of them, like Dogecoin, I don't know if you've been watching Doge lately. I need to do research on that, but I don't think the mining ever stops on that. Ethereum's the same way. Ethereum is always going to be mined. There's no limits, and so therefore it's not like with Bitcoin. The way it worked was it started in 2008, and for 4 years it was 50 Bitcoins every 15 minutes that were mined, and then in 2016. It halved, and it went from 50 Bitcoins to 25 Bitcoins. And then in 2020, it halved again from 25 to 12 and a half. Let me think. 2008, 2012, it halved down to 25. 2016, it halved down to 12 and a half. 2020, it went to 6 1/4. And so that was it. So the point being is that so that's a recipe as it's getting halved. There's less of them being created, and there's more people that are interested in them, which causes the price to go up. And so it's an opportunity for to make some money, or not to make some, to basically, if you're into it. You can your value of whatever you have goes up, and actually, I think it's more accurately said that the reason it's going up is because the fiat currencies are being printed like mad, and so it's really because of hyperinflation of the Federal Reserve note, the fiat currencies. At any rate, you need to do some research. I own some cryptos. Lately, Bitcoin has been doing sideways action. I think it's getting ready for another jump, but it's doing sideways action right now. It does that once in a while. But other cryptos, like Ethereum, has been going up. So has Theta. So has other ones. And I have I have a little bit of Ethereum. I have a bit of a Theta. I've got about 4,000 Theta. And I've also got some, I got a bunch of cryptos. I got a bunch. I've been, buying them over, for probably about, I bought Ethereum. I bought Litecoin when it was $7 a coin. And now it's like 350, 320, 330, something like that. Anyways, so I've been dabbling into this now for probably about 6 years. Anyways, so it's time to educate yourself about it. I would highly encourage you. That course right there is on YouTube. It's free, and it's a good place to get started. And that's a very, very credible source, in my opinion. Anyway, so let's get back to the topic at hand. We're talking about territorialism. We're talking about the two national governments, and the fact that one of them is called the United States of America under the Articles of Confederation, and so at common law, only gold or silver or legal tender. If you want common law, it requires honest measures. There's two national governments. One operates within the Constitution, the other one does not. We talked about that. And we're talking about Federal Reserve notes versus gold or silver coin. Now, the thing you have to understand is that Federal Reserve notes discharge debt with limited liability. You can never, ever, ever pay a debt with a Federal Reserve note. The absolute best that you can ever do is you can discharge debt with limited liability. And this is a case in Minnesota. There is a distinction between the debt discharged and one paid. When discharged, the debt still exists, though divested of its character as a legal obligation during the operation of the discharge. These bar member scum lay awake at night dreaming this stuff up. But it all operates when you use a Federal Reserve note. Think about it. Federal Reserve note's a negotiable instrument. Negotiable instrument law is a subset of Roman law. There's a maxim of Roman law that says, let he who is willing to be deceived be deceived. So when you use a Federal Reserve note, you're putting yourself in international law, in Roman law, and they're liars, they're thieves. You're just asking for it is what's happening. It's all satanic. That's satanic. That's Satanism is what it is, in my opinion. And so you're asking for it. That's why I put, and when I put it in my video, matter of fact, I think it's the next one. It is. Okay. So copies of these documents can be found on my website, linked on my recent videos. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forms, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. And this is why I put this in here, okay? Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin. But as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the fake money, the military script, the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders. Send me an email for particulars. I put that in there because I'm not taking advantage of any privileges. There's a Supreme Court case called Carlisle versus United States from 1873 that says that everyone not privileged is sovereign. If you are using Federal Reserve notes, or they can presume in their martial law military dictatorship that you're using Federal Reserve notes, then that's a privilege. And they can go and say, we want our tax. They are thieves. They are liars. They perjure their oaths at the drop of a hat. You have to build a case against them. It's all Satanism. If the truth is not, if they lie about one thing, then the truth is simply not in them. Don't get me going. You're going to get me going here. So that's why I prefer gold or silver coin. This is the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, located at 48 Stat 337. As used means government of the United States. The term currency of the United States means currency which is legal tender in the United States and includes United States notes and Federal Reserve notes. Well, think about what that's saying, folks. That's saying that Federal Reserve notes are meant for internal use of the government only. That means that they should only be coming to you if you're a government employee. So they're presuming that you're one of their government employees, right? That's why they're wanting Federal Reserve notes, but that's perjury of their oath, because Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 says that the government is only 10 square miles over there between Virginia and Maryland. So what are you doing talking to me? And that's the argument. We're going to talk about that. That's the whole purpose of all of this video, it's all about territorialism. It's all about these Federal Reserve notes. They always want Federal Reserve notes. Federal Reserve notes are commercial paper. Federal Reserve notes are a forced loan. Federal Reserve notes are IOUs. And if you're in Canada, it's Bank of Canada notes. The principles are the same. If you're in England, they're Bank of England notes, and the principles are the same. And if you're in Europe, it's what? European Central Bank notes. I haven't even looked at a euro in a long time, so I don't even know. I can't remember what they look like. But it's still, they're issued by the European Central Bank. Paper falls into two categories. They're promissory notes or IOUs, one or the other. A requirement for a promissory note is to have a promise to pay. These gold certificates and silver certificates, well, let's go back to one. We got one right here. And it says here, there is in deposit in the Treasury of the United States of America, $1 in silver payable to the bearer on demand. And so you can take this and go and get your silver at the Treasury if you want it. And this is issued, this is not a Federal Reserve note. This is issued by the United States Department of the Treasury. This is 1957. So I think that's United States Department of the Treasury. It says it right here. Anyways, it's really hard to read that, but that's a blue seal. It's the Treasury on those $5 Treasury notes that were issued during the Kennedy administration. This seal here was red. But this one here is blue. So I know the significance there. That all is significant. It's very significant. If you look on a Federal Reserve note, let me get one out here real quick. Yeah, that seal is green. I got to get a magnifying glass so I can blow this thing up and see what it says. Oh, here. There it is. I knew I had one. Says the Department of the Treasury. It doesn't say U.S. Department of the Treasury. But it does say 1789. But it just says the Department of the Treasury. The reason I wonder, because I've seen something that said that the Treasury was ended in 1921. So I'll bet you that's what that says too, the Department of the Treasury. It doesn't say U.S. Department of the Treasury. But it says 1789. So it's hard to say. I was thinking, I'll bet you the Treasury's been seized by the International Monetary Fund. Anyways, that's the topic for another day. So there's a Federal Reserve note. There's a Treasury note. Actually, it doesn't say if it's a Treasury note or not. It just says it's a silver certificate on those other ones, they say treasury note on them. Anyways, okay, so that's why I put on there that I prefer gold or silver coin. Gold certificates and silver certificates were promissory notes because it says you can go and get your gold or silver. You can never pay a debt with a Federal Reserve note or a bank note of any kind. A silver certificate is different. Well, even a silver certificate is still a negotiable instrument, but it would be closer to paying it than a Federal Reserve note. Federal Reserve note is nothing. It's an IOU. Check out my other videos, Bankster Thieves Playlist, Roman Cult Playlist, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 through 7, Do-It-Yourself How Not to Volunteer for the Selective Service of the Draft, Martial Laws Here, Do-It-Yourself No Income Tax, Do-It-Yourself Free Mail, Do-It-Yourself Kangaroo Courts 1 through 19, Canada Border Pigs Playlist, Bar Members and their Satanic Connections Playlist. This rule does not interfere with the right of the victorious invader to tax the people or their property, to levy forced loans, to billet soldiers, or to appropriate property, especially houses, lands, boats, ships, churches, for temporary and military uses. So, yeah, they can levy forced loans. The important thing that I wanted to point out there was the forced loans. So this forced loans is a treasury note, okay? Matter of fact, the Supreme Court called them treasury notes, called them forced loans, and they were talking about the treasury notes that were issued during the Civil War. Cryptocurrency is not a forced loan. Anything can be used as a medium of exchange as long as we agree to it. It's called barter. Cryptocurrency was not issued by the government. Cryptocurrency is a private form of exchange. Gold and silver coin is exchanging one thing of value for something else of value. My contact information, my blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group on Facebook called Sovereignty International is being deleted. Quite frankly, I haven't been there in months, and I'm not interested in going there. Facebook is just a place where there's lots of censorship, and it's CIA gathering information on you. So why would I go there so they can gather information on me? Actually, this is a freelist private group, freelist.org. I've got a private group there called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. I've got one at Google called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. Follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Hopefully, I got to file a war crimes complaint against them because they took my profile down. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. I've also got a library profile. Matter of fact, library downloads all of my YouTube videos. My Patreon is Sovereignty International, and I have a MeWe group. Congress converted citizenship into to the opposite of what the founders intended for the purpose of enslaving everybody. So Congress is really the problem here, and Congress is owned and operated by the Roman cult. So why should that be a surprise? And while the 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. And that's Colgate versus Harvey, U.S. Supreme Court, and I'm not sure the date, 296 U.S. 404. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. Citizenship is a political status and may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. Obviously, they're talking about federal citizenship. Every taxpayer is assessed a trust having sufficient interest in preventing abuse of the trust to be recognized in the fields of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. That's a summary from Henry Bollins. Sad will be the day when the American people forget their traditions and their history and no longer remember that the country they love, the institutions they cherish, and the freedom they hope to preserve were born in the throes of an armed resistance to tyranny and nursed in the rugged arms of fearless men. Roger Sherman, signer of the Declaration of Independence. Ain't that the truth? Yeah, there was, I think, an armistice for the Civil War. I think that's all it was. Is basically a. I'm not sure if it's a ceasefire. How that would be called? Armistice would be a ceasefire, or anyways. Just looking at some of the comments. Okay, keep moving here. Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligation to pay income tax. Unless the defendant can establish that he's not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. And this is a code of law for the District of Columbia at 31 Stat 1432, the legal estate to be the cestui use. And they even presume you're dead. This is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's the Roman cult, folks. For when they were driven out of all their former holds, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal feoffees, to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits while the season of the land remained in the nominal feoffee, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks. Now think about it. So they go and transfer it to themselves, and they get to be the ones to judge. Isn't that convenient? To be bound in conscience to account to a cestui use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. Well, that's taxes, folks. How convenient. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And this is codified at 15 U.S.C. section 44 in the definitions. Corporation shall deem to include a company, trust, so-called Massachusetts trust, or association, incorporated or unincorporated, which is organized to carry on business for its own profit or that of its members, and has shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. And then it lists the same definition, except that it doesn't have shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. And they could have made that a lot shorter, but they want to make it as confusing as possible. That's what these bar member scum like to do. Article 4, Section 2, Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. Do you think the state of New Jersey is required to follow the Code of Federal Regulations? Absolutely, folks. Or the state of New York or the state of Texas, they're all required to follow the Code of Federal Regulations. Well, that means that they're other property of the United States. That also means that they're territory. It's all territorial. So is it national property? Actually, it is national property. Is the city of Dallas, the city of Philadelphia, the city of New York? How about the county of Tarrant? How about Tarrant County? I guarantee you that Tarrant County doesn't follow any regulations. The county of Tarrant follows them. Tarrant County is we the people. Law of nations is international law. All banks operate in international law. Military despotism is international law. The Uniform Commercial Code is international law. That's private international law. All codes, rules, and regulations are international law. Forced loans is probably the single most important thing for a military dictatorship. It makes it so that military courts presume you do not pay a debt. They're all military. Remember, talked about the ecclesiastical So then all martial law comes from the Roman cult. Think about it. It makes everybody into paupers. Paupers have no rights except what they allow you to have. Gold is the money of kings. Silver is the money of gentlemen. Barter is the money of peasants. Debt is the money of slaves. The Federal Reserve was set up under the insurance laws of the United States. Federal Reserve notes are worthless insurance script. Anything purchased with worthless insurance script is the property of the issuer of the script. Taxes are the fee for using the private money system. The single most important requirement for a Republican form of government is lawful money. Lawful money is not Federal Reserve notes, it's not bank notes, it's not forced loans, it's not discharged debts, and it's not international law. Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. Therefore, non-resistance to tyrants is obedience to Satan. Well said. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Don't forget to follow me on Steam at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video. On YouTube, don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steam it, don't forget to go vote and make your comments. There's the front page of my channel. Notice that it kind of looks like the Matrix there. Anyways, the arrow is pointing at the bell. The subscribe button's already been clicked, or it would be red, and the bell needs to be clicked because it's not, doesn't look like it's vibrating. What is called proclaiming martial law is no law at all, but merely for the sake of public safety in circumstances of great emergency, setting aside all law and acting under military power. And that's 8 Attorney General's opinion, February 3rd, 1857. Yes, there are actually mining pools that mine cryptocurrencies. And there's people I've met that have what you could call a farm, which is they have a bunch of machines mining it. That's why they have to pass statutes for common law offenses. That's why all statutes are edicts under martial law, and that's even found in the Libra Code. We can't even begin to count the number of times judges, lawyers, and statesmen have said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by statutes. They would be more truthful if they said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by martial law. And that's taken from that book, The Non-Ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ella to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. That book is full of all sorts of little jewels. I highly recommend it. It's about 150 pages, so it's not that long, and it's double spaced, so it's a really nice, quick read. It's available on my website if anybody wants to get it. There is no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes. In other words, that's Roman law, that's civil law, where they make because that's martial law. We're under martial law. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. The legislature may create an offense and in the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. So the same thing is in Texas, the same thing is in all the states. They all have penal codes. They all have, everything's codified. Under military dictatorship, there is no law, which is why they're required to pass statutes for common law crimes like murder and assault. This creates civil law, which creates democracy. Under military dictatorship, you have a democracy. And that's democracy is international law. Negotiable instrument law is a subset of Roman law. Mortgages are Roman law. Roman law is international law. The Bar Treaty of 1947 falls under the law of nations. I have exclusive content available on my website and on Patreon. The website has 2 subscription levels, and I accept cryptocurrencies. The basic subscription level is $29.99 a year for the videos only, and $49.99 a year for the videos plus unlimited consultations. But I'm not a liar. Well, I'm in a lawyer. No, I'm in a liar. But I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and how to find the forms. These only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception. And my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. I need other people fighting the battles that are on point. My exclusive website, some of the videos that I have are on the exclusive videos are Arlington Private Information Share, Land Deed Training, Estoppel Certificates Training, Foreclosure Estoppel Certificates Training, Corporate Denial Training, Toll Roads Notice of Demand Training, Invoice Training, Notice of Void Judgment Training, Revocation of Signature Training, Third Party Witness Training, Federal Habeas Corpus Training. There's also revocation of voter registration training, criminal complaint training. There's actually, probably about 3 videos of that. Lawsuit training, other training, depending, and requests are possible depending on what it is and if it's within the scope of what I want to do and something that I can do. I've also got Northeast Private Information Share videos. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free, linked on my videos and on my website. All exclusive content will be on my website, and you can buy a subscription there. They've been telling people for decades that we're in a democracy. Do you think this is an accident? Civil law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases meaning the same system of jurisprudence, that rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law, to distinguish it from the law of nature and from international law. So, civil law, Roman civil law, and municipal law are the same. Let he who is willing to be deceived be deceived. That's a Roman law maxim. So they lie, they cheat, they steal as much as they can. Oh, look at that, a bunch of thieves. The judge works for the state, the prosecutor works for the state, the pig works for the state. The vast majority of the disputes that the pigs initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the pigs, and the only witness, also the pigs, all represent the same party. And since no corpus delicti, mens rea or acts reus, can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. Judge wears a military uniform. Judge sits there and plays stupid. So let's go back and look. See, they're all wearing a military uniform. That's why I file a bar grievance against him, okay? Because he is just a bought and paid for a clerk. He's really not a judge. He's working for him. This is all a contract, okay? They're assaulting you with one of their so-called contracts. And this guy over here is just a low intelligence thug, okay? They don't have a clue about what's really going on. This guy's really where it's coming from. So file a bar grievance against his butt. And file a bar grievance against him, because I'd file a judicial complaint against him, I can just about guarantee you they're not going to want to talk to you after that. Judge sits there and plays stupid. If you fail to follow some obscure rule or procedure, they sell you into slavery, and they always want Federal Reserve notes. Remember, that's all territorial. They're looking for Federal Reserve notes. Everything they do is a fraud and a nullity. When acting to enforce a statute and subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. Courts administering and enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but act ministerially. So he's a bought and paid for clerk. So once you understand that, and they're lying to you, they're converting your name into that all block capital letters Sestake Trust, and so they're just nothing but a bunch of thieves. Okay, that's exactly what it is. But merely act as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency. That's the scumbag bar member. So you go after that scumbag bar member. That scumbag bar member is the one that's telling the pigs to go ahead and hire people with low intelligence, because then they can go out and assault people and get away with it. That's exactly where it's all coming from. It's the accepted rule not only of state courts but of the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a bought and paid for a clerk. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature and otherwise, act as mere clerks. Okay, so it's all just a commercial transaction. They're thieves. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. It doesn't mean anything. Where there is no jurisdiction, there is no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. Such has been the law from the days of Marshal Saya. And that's a federal court case quoting Bradley versus Fisher, which is a U.S. Supreme Court case, which is quoting 10 Coke 68, which is Coke in the 1500s. Whereas taxation by the Parliament of Great Britain for the purpose of raising a revenue in His Majesty's colonies, provinces, and plantations in North America, remember, they were trying to raise revenue, which is commercial paper, has been found by experience to occasion great uneasiness and disorders. Well, no shit, Batman, that from and after the passing of this act, the King and Parliament of Great Britain will not impose any duty, tax, or assessment whatever payable in any of the colonies, provinces, or plantations in North America or the West Indies, except only such duties as it may be expedient to impose for the regulation of commerce. And that's George III, chapter 12, 1778. 2 years after the Declaration of Independence. Why is that a surprise? That's like closing the barn door after the horses get out. Taxes caused the War of Independence. If they can tax you, then you are their slave. You are forced to work for them for nothing. It's becoming more and more difficult to be free. A subject is a slave. Taxation is forced work for nothing. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or its permission. A tax is an impost, a tribute imposed on the subject, on the slaves, on the property. An excise, a tallage. So it's excise taxes is what it is, a privilege. In public law, taxation signifies the system for raising money for public services by compelling the payment by individuals of sums of money called taxes. Some general principles of taxation are said to be that the subjects of every state ought to contribute to the support of the government as nearly as possible in proportion to their respective abilities. That is, in proportion to the revenue which they respectively enjoy under the protection of the state. In the observation or neglect of this maxim consists in what is called the equality or inequality of taxation. That's the Dictionary of English Law, Sweet and Maxwell Limited, London, 1959. There's two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by sword and the other is by debt. Judge wears a military uniform, sits there and plays stupid. And there's the bought and paid for whores. But in fact, and in law, such statutes are intended to be applied to those who are here as residents in this state under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Federal Constitution and the so-called 14th Amendment. And that is a summary from United States versus United Mine Workers, 1947. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude is set as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall be duly convicted. So they set up the scenario to populate the prisons. That's exactly what it is. So they fabricate a fictitious crime, and then they put on a show trial in their kangaroo court and sell them into slavery. He, the prisoner, has as a consequence of his crime not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights except those which the law in its humanity affords him. He is for the time being a slave of the state. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, and maketh merchandise of him, or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. We should be putting evil away from among us, folks. This is all Satanism. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. We, the people, are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who would pervert the Constitution. Tyranny is defined as that which is legal for the government but illegal for the citizenry. A republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. What country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. The Constitution is not a document for the government to restrain the people. It's an instrument for the people to restrain the government. A nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves. If fascism ever comes to America, it will come in the name of liberalism, I'll say. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. All executive orders or regulations for property are slaves of the government and therefore a color of law. Color of law is something that looks like law but isn't. It's a felony to violate your rights under the color of law. They can violate your rights as long as they can claim good faith. Tell them it's a felony and have witnesses. America needs God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Exodus 20:3. The New World Order will require that you worship government. That is going on in China right now with the Falun Gong. That they are doing their organ harvesting. So they're basically those people do not worship government. That's the only reason they're going after them. They refuse to do it. And that's what's happening. And that's coming here if we don't put a stop to it. The greatest tyrannies are always perpetrated in the name of the noblest causes. The strongest reason for the people to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny and government. Time to get unplugged. We're in the final stages of a communist takeover. We need to be prepared for anything. Remote viewers and futurists have said that for years that there'll be a point in time when there are riots in every major city and a great nation will disappear in one day. The Bible says 1 hour. Then there will be wars between the states. Providence favors the prepared. There's no difference between communism and socialism, except in the means of achieving the same ultimate end. Communism proposes to enslave men by force, socialism by vote. It is merely the difference between murder and suicide. Ain't that the truth? It is the duty of the patriot to protect his country from its government. It's all about territorialism. For U.S. citizens, every state's a territory. They are still limited by Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, and Article 6, Clause 2. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 says to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square, as made by session of particular states, and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature. Well, how many states, and here in New Jersey, they said that there was some swamplands that was owned by the federal government because they went and actually did searches online. And if there's not an act of the legislature, then it doesn't matter. This is U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, and this is U.S. Constitution, Article 6, Clause 2. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And judges at every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So this is what someone does, okay? This is on my group. This is a guy by the name of Randy that's in Colorado, actually. This is why it's good to network with other people of like mind on my groups, because we share this kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff that comes up. So he basically says this is what he files: counterclaim, default judgment. He calls it a counterclaim and default judgment. So some of this stuff is made up, okay? You have to change it to suit your situation, but otherwise, it's basically the same. But so up here, you have court clerk Sandy Hodge. What I would do is I would take this thing down. I would put this on a document. Actually, I'm going to show you what I would do. This is one way of proceeding. Okay, if you were going to proceed this way, you just make up the case. All right, you take the case number, put it across the top, the court, all that, to the court clerk, city municipal court, so you basically make it a letter. Actually, I would, you could make it a letter. That's one way of doing it. I did it a different way. Anyways, so they basically state of Texas, you put them down as co-defendants, counterclaim wrongdoer. So you put yourself down as plaintiff and then counterclaim wrongdoer. And then they're down as co-defendants. And then you say jurisdiction violation. United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 clarifies the limit to jurisdiction of the United States and associates, state of Texas or state of New Jersey, counterclaim wrongdoer, limited by territorial jurisdiction. Finding plaintiff, state of New Jersey or state of Texas, counterclaim wrongdoer operated outside jurisdiction, having no authority. Plaintiff, state of Texas, counterclaim wrongdoer operating as a rogue government. United States and associates, plaintiff counterclaim wrongdoer has been declared a private corporation for violating a charter. Congressional Record, March 1933, Volume 33. Currency is now issued by a private corporate United States, therefore without charter authority, using brutal force, fraud, deceiving the courts, people, and the claimant. Specifically, Charlie Randy, leaving the plaintiff, state of Texas or state of New Jersey, counterclaim wrongdoer with no legitimate authority for existence. Finding the plaintiff, counterclaim wrongdoer with dishonor and demonstrates hatred and disobedience of the Charter, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. The citation for speeding or any other traffic incident is not a crime or injury in violation of common law. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3, bills of attainder. Jurisdiction penalties by the same charter, it declares the penalty for that invasion of jurisdiction. Article 3, Section 3, United States Constitution as treason against the people, and specifically Charlie Smith. Charlie Randy, Court of Record, common law finds the plaintiff, state of Texas or state of New Jersey, counterclaim defendant wrongdoer, despising its origin, defying territorial jurisdiction, and dishonoring the law of the land, while committing many actions of injury and crime of treason and sedition as described in the affidavit attached and claims above. The default judgment will be writ that the cases be dismissed for invasion of jurisdiction. Excuse me. Writ that the plaintiff, state of Texas, may pay damages of X amount of dollars plus counselor at law for X amount of dollars. Writ that the plaintiff counterclaim defendant, state of Texas, to reply to this verdict within 30 days or request extension or be found in default judgment. So that's a way of putting them into default judgment. And then a copy sent USPS. So you sent this by mail to the state of Texas prosecutor Succum, who is designated representative for the state of Texas in this matter. And then you sign it under penalties of perjury, counselor at law, representing Bob William, court of law, common law. So this is where he did it for someone else, actually. Now, what I did is this. The only mistake I made was I should have signed it under penalty of perjury underneath my name. But you know, this was actually involving Colleyville, and they don't want to talk to me because I already messed them up. So I think they were glad to make it go away because I haven't heard a peep out of them. Date 6th of April, 2021, the Constitution of the United States of America, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, I'm not a United States citizen. I am a Texas national. Vacate this citation for lack of jurisdiction. And then I took it down to their court and I filed it. And I also attached a copy of the citation. Matter of fact, I think I'll just put it in here. I was going to do that and then didn't. Okay, there's the citation. It's obviously shrunk down. But I attached that. I actually had that stapled together. So you can see the filed stamp on it on the bottom. I stapled them together, took them in there with a couple extra copies, and they kept the original and I kept the copies, or one copy. And I actually filed an original and a copy and gave it to the court, and one for the prosecutor. And I had already filed bar grievances against the prosecutor and judicial complaints against the court in another matter. So I'm sure they didn't, because I haven't heard a peep out of them. Okay. And then plus I sent one of my nasty grams to the chief of police because I had already served one of my notice and demands on him, and he completely ignored it. So he gets a nasty gram. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Texas Rangers raided their pig department and basically fired the chief of police. But I don't know. I haven't heard peep. Haven't heard nothing. It's like it's all gone silent. So, anyways, that's what I did, and that was April 6, 2021. So this is all fairly recent. And if you see here, I was supposed to respond by the 4th or 5th of 3rd of May. But I haven't received anything. I suppose they could still send me something. I don't think they want to talk to me, quite frankly, because then they just get more bar grievances and judicial complaints, and 3 bar grievances and they're done. So, anyways, I guess we'll see what happens. So that's territorialism. That's my video on territorialism. Does anybody have any questions? It's all Masonic. They're all Masons. There's no doubt about it. I like handwriting it because that's common law, and they don't have anything to say about handwriting it. Matter of fact, that's common law. So I like handwriting it. My handwriting is lousy at best. That's my handwriting there. But I think it's legible. And if it's not, then too bad. The only thing I left out of there is under penalty of perjury under my name there. Should have signed that under penalty of perjury. But I don't think they want to talk to me, so I think that's decided anyways. The next step would have been contact, or Randy Kelton has a website called trafficticket.website. And that would be the next step, is to go there and build a case against them and break it off in their ass. Either way, so I don't, if they think they want to contact me, I don't think they're going to want to. But if they think they want to, then that'll be the next step, is Randy Kelton and break it off in their ass. And so that would be the next step. Now, he doesn't use common law or any of that stuff. And so he uses their codes. And, from what he says, they don't read their codes anyways. And so that's all the more reason to go after them. Break it off in their ass. Does anybody have anything else that they want to cover today? Because we're already well into the, in Canada, it's going to be completely different. And I'm not sure what to do in Canada, because you don't have the Constitution to rely on. I wish I could tell you otherwise. Communist Canada is definitely communist. Except that, I don't know which province you're in. In Alberta, they just won't let you renew your driver's license or registration. Now, I'm not interested in their driver's license or registration anyway, so I just throw it all in the garbage. But, the question is how are you going to deal with that? Can you drive around without a driver's license or registration? Again, you don't have the Constitution like we have. I'm telling you, America, that Constitution is like a silver bullet. That is a major problem for them. And Canada, I just feel for you completely. I wish I could tell you what to say. I don't know what state or province you're in. Although I would still file bar grievances, definitely file bar grievances against them. It doesn't really matter, even if you're right. From what Randy Kelton tells me, you just file the bar grievances and they get too many bar grievances against them and they're done. They lose their bond. I don't know what it is in Canada. I know in the US, from what Randy Kelton says, 3 bar grievances and they lose their bond. I don't know. I would expect that it'd probably be very similar in Canada. Matter of fact, I'm planning on filing some bar grievances against Canadian scumbag bar members. Absolutely. But beyond that, I don't know what to say. I'm glad. I have no interest in going to communist Canada. If I went there, it would be with armed troops to blow out the fucking border guard pigs. Yeah, Ontario. Yeah, Ontario is. There's a lot of things about Ontario that's good, and yeah, they're busy locking people down and all sorts of stuff. You don't see any of that stuff here. I just sent out a bunch of pictures of Ocean City that on the boardwalk. There's no lockdowns going on here. Sometimes they tell you that I got kicked out of one place because I didn't wear a mask. But other than that, I've been going all sorts of places and nobody ever says anything. Everybody's like, I was at a Walmart and everybody was wearing a mask, but nobody said anything to me about not wearing it. But that's why I know in Ontario and Quebec and Canada, they're getting real the lockdown crap. It's all a bunch of crap. And I was on the boardwalk a couple days ago in Ocean City, New Jersey, and I sent pictures. I mean, I could put pictures up and everybody could see them. It was you'd never know there was any lockdown here. The people were out there on the boardwalk. There was like, maybe about 3 people that had masks on. Everybody else didn't. Yeah, well, that's good. Japan has a strong constitution. Yeah. Well, we're not using it, so why don't the Japanese use it? Yeah, I know. I've been hearing about the lockdowns in Quebec. Jean-Claude Beyond Mystic is actually, I guess he's in Ontario. Yeah. Well, actually, Quebec is under common law too, but it's being ignored. You're right. Yep, I feel for you. I grew up in Canada, so I especially feel for you. I like Texas. I'm in New Jersey now, but so Arizona, love Arizona, Texas. I love America. It's great. I got no interest in going to communist Canada. I wish I could tell you otherwise. I feel for you. I grew up there. I grew up in Alberta. I got family still in Alberta. I got family in BC. I used to work for Bombardier in Toronto. It's that communist Trudeau, Castro's son. Yep. Next week, we're going to be talking about bar grievances and going into some details on things that I do when I file them and how I do it. And so we'll be spending probably at least a whole day on bar grievances next week. But bar grievances, I really think there's more and more people are telling me to do these bar grievances, and I think they're right. Actually, I think that we just need to stretch their necks. Why infiltrate? Just stretch their necks. That'll fix it up. That'll solve the problem right there. Yeah, I'm not surprised. So nobody's traveling between BC and Alberta? What about BC and Washington? Yeah, I got no interest in going there. That's communist Canada. The people of Canada I think they should just revolt and stretch old Trudeau's neck. I'd really like to see that. I'd cheer. Woohoo! Anyways, if that's about it, it's too late to try and start something new. If anybody has something they want to talk about, I'm open to it. But it's really too late to start something new. Otherwise, we might as well just end it. There's actually a friend of mine down here that's a disbarred lawyer. And he was telling me about essential workers, and he was going to get a letter. He's a disbarred lawyer, so he knows lots of lawyers in Canada. He's a disbarred lawyer from Canada, believe it or not, from Alberta. Anyways, he was talking about getting an essential worker letter, and he said that there's other people use those things to go across the border. They go driving, they don't fly, they drive across, and they get through no problem, and they go and do what they have to do, and nobody says anything. They have to, wear a mask and all the rest of that crap, but they don't get harassed. You know what I mean? So I thought that was kind of interesting. Well, glad I could help. And unless we have something else we want to talk about, we'll start tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock Eastern. Well, we're all Americans. Even those in Canada and Mexico, we're all Americans. Think about it. Well, it's a journey. It's not an event. I don't know everything. I'll be the first one to admit it. And so I just share what I know. And actually, I think that I was born for this, quite frankly. So we gotta do what we can to share, to network and share with other people, and put a stop to this tyranny. So thanks for everything. I guess we'll end it now, and we'll see you guys tomorrow morning at bright and early at 10 o'clock Eastern time. Take care. See ya.